Yes, hello. Markus Linde from Hamburg in Germany. I'm a
Denmark, no?
Denmark. Sorry, if you believe in science, it's Denmark today, which means we're truly European today. I'm a music agent, a sync agent, a music supervisor, a music broker. When we come to what that means later on in our program here, I'm in the music business for some 35 years, something like that, since the early 80s. I used to work for independent labels. I used to work for Sony Music as a promoter and a marketing and A&R manager. And I was the managing director of Freibank Music Publishing, which is one of the leading German independent publishing companies. And while I was working for Freibank, I got more and more involved into the sync business. Because the Freibank repertoire is pretty special. It's more left of center, very electronic, very avant-garde stuff sometimes. And there was a time some 15, 16 years ago when advertising agencies were a little bit braver than they are these days. And so I signed licensed a lot of the music into advertisement. And after a while, I kind of organically changed sides and became a music supervisor, an independent music supervisor, sync agent, freelancing.
So we're going to get into what that means exactly with music supervisors and sync agents and all the rest of the words we just heard. At first, I found all the terminology quite confusing. But before we actually get into it, I would like to ask, just so we have an idea of who is in the room, so let's see, how many artists in the room? Okay. Oh, good sir, that's a surprise. Very well, very well. And how many managers? Okay, a few managers. And who else? Publishers, music publishers. Any music publishers in the room? 1, 2, three music publishers. Okay, very good.
You're everything. That's great. It's not the end.
And okay, labels? No. Okay, yeah, some labels there. Okay, some other people who are several hats. Did I miss anyone?
Supervisors or sync agents.
Oh,
there you go. That's interesting.
Where are you from? Excellent. Good, good, good. So that's for the last slide of the presentation. We need to come back to that. Yeah. Okay. So I guess that's it. Maybe just to have an idea who's on the live side. Are there any booking agents? No, they're not interested in sync. They're not here. Okay. So this is meant to really be set up, as we have already started, as a dialogue. And the room might not feel like it's set up for that sort of roundtable dialogue setup, but really it's not about us or Marcus speaking at you in a soliloquy or in a monologue. It's really about interaction. So feel free to ask questions, interrupt as we go along. Yeah,
at any time.
Yeah, and so let's get started. This diagram that you're now seeing started off on a piece of paper that Marcus drew with a pencil at one of the sessions. Where was that original drawing piece of art from?
I think it was done for Portugal, but only to inform the panel, not the audience, the panel about what I'm doing actually, and it evolved from there, and we finished this in a proper and decipherable way last night to start off with an overview of the structure of what we are doing.
The structure, the workflows, but it is a faithful representation of the original piece of art by Markus Linde, drawn with a pencil and a piece of paper. It is really quite accurate, and we will frame the original at some point. But so the idea for this hour that we are together is to sort of guide you through this and to explain whatever questions or doubts arise in the process. So we will come back to the general layout later. But I would like to ask Marcus to get started on identifying, first of all, the goods and the players. Marcus, what can you tell us about that side?
We start on the left side of that previous picture, and we want to describe how the goods reach the client, the user in the end. The goods, of course, being the composition and the recording, the music. So that goes for most of you in this room who are in charge of music, either as an artist or either as publishers or as a record label, with an interest to get their music across to a use in advertising. In addition to publishers, labels and artists, there could be composers, individual composers and producers as well, who do bespoke music. But for the sake of explaining the workflow here, I think we stick to what we call original song, original music, that is going from the end of the rights owners to the end of the clients at the moment. So we have the goods, which is the composition and the recording. And as I say, we have the players on our side, the labels, the publishers, and the artists. We are interested in getting our stuff over to the other side, to the advertising people, to be used in commercials and in industry films, image films, but mainly commercials.
So, if I may just interject, to talk about the goods, I'm going to tell you a little anecdote about a common practice in Portugal, which is a bit strange. But maybe it also happens in other places, we'll find out. But the goods identify a composition, and they identify a recording. So we have, on the publishing side, the composition, whether it is an instrumental or whether it's words and music. And on the recording side, we have on the master side, the actual recording of that composition. And sometimes what happens in Portugal is that under the Portuguese blanket license, the SPA in Portugal sometimes licenses the composition and forgets about the recording. So can you tell us a little bit more about that from your perspective as a music supervisor?
Well, it's not just that an official institution forgets about it. It's mostly the clients who forget about licensing both the composition and the recording. It has turned out to be quite difficult for them to understand how the music industry works, and I try to explain that to them by use of an example like, let's say, Yesterday by the Beatles. If they want to use Yesterday by the Beatles, they have to go to the Beatles publishers, who are representing John Lennon and Paul McCartney, in order to be allowed to use the composition. Now, if they agree, they can proceed to go to the label, Apple Music or EMI in those days, to use the recording of Yesterday. If, on the other hand, they want to use a recording by the Poznań Fire Brigade brass section of Yesterday, they don't have to go to EMI, of course, but they have to go to the Fire Brigade and license the recording from them. But still, they can only work with the green light for the composition in the first place. So we need the license for the composition and the recording.
So there are two sides, the publishing side and the master side.
Right.
Any questions on that? No comments? Excellent.
It sounds simple enough, but...
You've been very thorough, Marcus.
Well, it's just two, but it sounds simple enough, but there's so many mistakes being made in that field through neglect or not knowing the business on both sides, and we must not forget that these mistakes mostly turn out to be very expensive mistakes. Once a license is done or once a commercial is on air and you find out that you have forgotten to clear one side in there, it's this. First of all, there's the imminent danger that someone goes ahead and says it has to be taken off air, which is the worst that can happen, or the rights owners say, well, you have used it without asking us, So we asked twice the money that we would have usually gotten. So it's not good. And it's always a mess, and it leaves bad feelings for future deals as well, of course.
Now, I also want to, while we're talking about the players, I also want to bring up the question of the concept of one-stop licensing, because I think it's relevant, especially in the European independent music sector. That might be a plus. Can you tell us a little bit more about one-stop?
Absolutely. Well, having said that two sides have to be cleared, it is very obvious to say, well, wouldn't it be best if those rights were in one hand to make it easier for everyone? So in that case, you don't forget any side. And the closer you are to the right side, being like an artist yourself or an independent label who is much more flexible than, let's say, Universal Music or Sony Music, or a major publisher for that matter, you're closer to the creative process and to the process of recording. So it happens more often than not that you own both rights, the composition and the recording. And if you don't own both rights, at least you know which phone number to call immediately the moment a license comes up. So what you could do in that case is that you can relieve the potential client by saying, if you want to license this song, you have only to make one stop, which is at me, and I take care of all the rest, contracts, budgets, everything. So one stop is a very preferable option for licensing music for commercials. Yes.
Great. So let's, if there are no questions, we'll go to the next slide. The needs and the players. So on the other side of the fence, if you will, who do we have?
Well, the needs obviously is what we all know as the commercial film, the ad that I've been watching some local television at the hotel here. There's so many commercials going on. I think it's sometimes more than I'm used to in Germany. And in almost every commercial, there's music. So this is the field that we are talking about. There is definitely a need for recorded music, one way or the other, for commercials. But in addition to the usual commercial, these days, of course, there's a lot of so-called viral commercials, films made for the use in the internet, on a client's website, on a YouTube channel, in social media in general. And these films are produced for much less budget, of course, than a big commercial. They are produced faster. They have a very short-term need of music that can be from one day to the other. That they call you and say, "Look, we need music for our commercial. We have 1,000 euros. What do you have for that?" So that is becoming more common these days. And of course, then there's what, as a normal audience, we hardly see the so-called image film. It's mostly very expensive productions in which companies and corporations introduce themselves to their clients, which is not shown publicly, but on their, like, internally at showcases, events, and things like that. These are very prestigious productions because they are longer than the usual commercial. They are sometimes 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, sometimes even longer. So it's to have music in one of those films doesn't reach a wider audience, but it's definitely very worthwhile.
Unless, of course, Mercedes put it on the Frankfurt Auto Show wall, LED wall, and your song is on there.
The song is on there. You hardly get Shazammed in a situation like that, but still, it looks great in your portfolio as an artist or a publisher, if you can say that Mercedes used your song in an image film, of course, yes. So that's the needs where original music, where people want to use original music in order to make their films better, to give them an extra level of emotion, of message, of aesthetics, whatever you want to call it.
So then we get into the players, and by players, I mean the very, very complicated ecosystem of the different types of professionals that have a say in how music actually gets placed. And here I'm going to tell a story from South by Southwest, where I went to a panel with a music supervisor from the US who said that at one job that she was involved with, she counted 74 players or 74 opinions as to what the song would or wouldn't fit the commercial. And so at the end of the conclusion that she came to is that it's sort of a miracle that anything gets placed when somebody can just come up to the table and say, oh, no, I don't like, something else, next. So how does the players, how does this ecosystem really function?
Well, we come to that in the next step, but it's true that it's more than just 4 or potentially 4 players in it, especially where every company is structured in a different way. Every company has a different policy or history that goes for the client side, who has the brand or the product, but the same goes for the agency as well. So you have different people in charge. You have different people who are allowed an opinion. You have different people who have the final say in creative and financial processing within such a company. And as with football, when it comes to music, everyone has an opinion, of course, and everyone feels entitled to have an opinion and to inflict this on the people around them. So everyone who has like 1,000 tracks on their iTunes files feels like a supervisor or a music expert. So it's difficult to fight for your respected position within that circle. Music always comes, or mostly in most cases, comes last in a production. You must understand that the production of a commercial costs hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of euros, and that goes for the technical side, special effects, actors, directors, locations, everything behind it. And then someone says, "And what about the music?" And they say, we might have forgotten that in the budget, or, well, we have 50,000 left for a 5 million production or something like that. And that's where the problems usually start. And then, of course, as I said, the different, the complex infrastructures. So mainly, and we come to that later, these 4 institutions in our list are entitled to kind of either request a certain music or to have an opinion to the music. The client, that's the representative of the brand that the commercial is made for. The agency, who is in charge of the marketing of the complete.
So here we're talking advertising agency.
Advertising agency, in charge of the whole advertising campaign. The production company is the company who produces the film, the commercial, on behalf of the agency, and they hire a director who is in charge of the film. You would think that the director has a lot of saying in the music, but more often than not, he or she is also falls victim to internal discussions about that. Sometimes it happens that the director is able to bring their own music to the table, but it's not as common as you would expect it to be.
Okay. So the actual process, once we've identified the music side ecosystem and the client side, the advertising players, there is a process. So, and you just said that music is often the last step of the process, but let's consider a more ideal scenario where music is central to the advertising, or somebody has a very clear idea of what they want. How does it work? What is the actual workflow that's usually involved?
I think it's better if we don't go for the
we can't go for the ideal
Friday afternoon 5:45 call. We need music by Monday morning situation, which is more common than you would think. But let's say we have like a normal workflow between the players that we talked about. It starts...
What, 48 hours instead of 24?
48 is a luxury already, considering what you have to do. No, but it starts with what is called a pitch. Mainly the agency sends out this pitch to in the direction of the rights owners. I have to say, not some of the agencies have very good relationships to rights owners, to publishers, and to labels, and can send their pitches directly to them. Some of them, and we come to that later as well, use a music agent like myself or different music supervisors or supervising agencies as well. But the pitch describes what they are looking for. It contains a musical briefing, it contains a description of the film. Sometimes it even contains a so-called mood film. A mood film is a film already, but done with stock material in order to give an idea what the final result will look like. It's mostly done for the benefit of the client, to give them an idea what kind of creative idea the agency wants to sell to the client, and if they have approved of that creative idea, that's the basis for the briefing. The mood film is also normally already in the right length that is used. Like it's 30 seconds, it's 90 seconds, 60 seconds, which are the usual lengths in commercials. So when you, as someone who looks for music, if you need inspiration more than the few basic catchwords, a mood film is where you look at. And for instance, when I reply to a pitch, I don't send them just songs. I edit the songs to the mood film to go with the mood film already. That I don't have to explain to a client who I don't know, to a director or to an agency person, which 30 seconds of a song I mean to be put on that commercial. But I give them exactly that part of a song that I think is fitting. If there's no mood film, there's a storyboard. Sometimes storyboard is like some kind of a comic strip, which contains a cartoon or several cartoons and the dialogue or the voiceover in text. If you're lucky, you get reference music, which is a bit of a two-folded thing. Reference music gives you an idea in what direction, after several internal discussions already, the client and the agency agree to go musically. You usually get a well-known song. You get Coldplay, you get U2, you get, I don't know, Billie Eilish. I haven't received yet, but it probably will be soon. There was a time when...
It would be for a strange marketing campaign, I think.
There would be for a strange marketing campaign, and I'd be curious about what. But there was a time when, like, at least for a year, when we got all the like pixie-sounding Scandinavian female voices as reference songs. That changes. But reference music is always like when they tell you they want something like that, and ideally they want that, but they can't afford it, or it is not cannot be licensed.
But before we go to the afford it, because I see budget is in little, you know, quotation marks. But
the budget.
Before we get to that, I'm curious about how often you have situations where you read the briefing, and there is a reference track, and how often is it that the two actually make sense or don't make sense? Does it ever happen that the briefing is written a certain way and that the reference track has absolutely nothing to do with the briefing? Yes and no.
when they give you a briefing, give you a reference, every agency thinks that they have the most original and most precise briefing in advertising history, and that in the end is like that you reading the briefing, you already know what song to find for it. What happens normally is that the briefing is the most cliched thing of the whole pitch, because it's always positive, it's always either summer or friendship or love or relationships or something good or money. Like it cannot be more cliche. And it doesn't get more abstract than that. It doesn't get more let's say interesting than that. And they always think that after a briefing like that, you definitely know where this is going. Then you get the reference track, which sometimes is definitely someone's calling. The reference track, which is definitely not what the briefing is about, and you try to find out what they mean with this reference track behind the briefing, or the reference track itself is cliche too, which is like so, like I don't know, "Happy Together" by the Turtles is on every other briefing, or I don't know, Coldplay stuff, and well, you have all the hits, and they think it's "Walking on Sunshine" is, I don't know, it's about this time of the year or a bit earlier that you get these tracks as references, and then you go like, not one of these again, and then you push this all aside and you start at zero, because you cannot win by trying to fulfill these kind of briefings, because you would be stuck in a cliche rut as well. So you try to surprise the client, or try to surprise the other side by having one foot in the briefing and one foot totally out of the box and come up with something else. But that depends on the individual relationship between you and the side. It's the difficult part. It takes more than just reading a few words and listening to one song. You have to decipher what they are saying. So you have to understand what they are saying. You have to ask several times what they are saying. And sometimes upon the first question, you find out that it is all a misunderstanding, and someone else has a much better idea than the reference song. Depends on who you're talking to. So I told you the story. I think sometimes you can explain these things better in examples rather than in theory. When I had, like, I think it was 2 years ago, last year, when in November, someone called me and said if I could help them clear the song "Firestarter" by Prodigy. And he said, yeah, I could, like, when do you need it? He said, we want to do a short Christmas campaign starting in 2 weeks, and we want to use the song. And I think most of you know Firestarter. What is the commercial about if you want to use Firestarter, like both in terms of dynamics, but in terms of lyrics as well? So, well, it's the end of the year, it's fireworks, it's happy displays, it's people dancing. And I could try and clear it for you and get the money to do that, but let me send you the lyrics first, and maybe you want to go back to the client first and double check if this is okay with them. So I didn't get a job for €2,000 because they came back and said, well, thanks for the lyrics, the client is reconsidering the concept, and we're not doing it. So that's the reference song and the idea. Total misunderstanding.
Wow. Okay. So there's a certain amount of translation that goes into, or awareness building, client education even that goes into.
Definitely, yes. It's a lot of diplomacy involved, because you don't usually get to the client. You have a lot of people in between you and the client, and mostly it's either someone from the production company or someone from the advertising agency, and they already have their own ways of interpreting what the client wants. They are speaking to different people. The production company talks to the director. They have to keep the director happy. The agency talks to the creatives within the house who have an original creative idea that they want to reach as good as possible without compromising too much. In the end, they always have to compromise, but there's different interests at work, and you have to, like with finding the music and finding what you want to propose, you really have to know about those dynamics as well. Otherwise, it's all just a big pile of songs and MP3s that someone will listen to and will not understand what you meant by sending them in the first place. But we'll come to that later.
Okay, so let's get to the elephant in the room then. It's in quotes, it's budget, and it's obviously, it probably doesn't start with the budget, but it's obviously a central figure in this workflow, in this process.
Well, of course, there's a lot of prejudices about budgets because, well, the room wouldn't be so full if the music side would not expect to make some money from placing music in commercials. And everyone knows the story of someone who has made a few thousand euros or made millions by getting a song on an Apple campaign or on an international car campaign.
Or a few thousand on a Lidl campaign.
On a Lidl campaign, like that. But or one of the campaigns I've seen on television here could be Chibo coffee or I don't know, washing powder or something. Not everything is sexy. Not every product is fancy or cool. But every commercial needs music. So it's we shouldn't take the glamorous commercials that we all know as examples, but we should take the day-to-day business and the real life. And the real life in budgets is that usually either there is a budget, which is not as high as you would expect, but which could be solid, and we find music that fits into that budget bracket, or I get requests where they say we are looking for a young up and coming artist, which translates into we're looking for very cheap music, hopefully by someone who doesn't understand the business and who can be ripped off and who is happy to have his music on a butter campaign because this is great promotion for him or her. So this is another point where education comes in, because it is absolutely important, not just ideologically, but also when the industries, music and advertising, want to work together, to have respect for the music and to pay properly for the music and to create an understanding on the client side that music and artists, musicians, labels, publishers need to be treated in a fair way, and this is what they live on, like the director does, like the camera person does, like the agency does. Music is not just something that you can use freely just because you have an opinion on that. So trying to find a balance there and trying to get a budget out of the client is very, very difficult, and that means that's why budget is more than that. Budget is the most political aspect of the whole thing. You don't negotiate like give it to me like for 5,000 euros less or something. It's more like give it to me for free, or give it to me for a symbolic price or something like that. And really to try and educate both. On the other hand, if I have a band who has never had anything placed in a commercial or has let's say a very independent history of releases and has the opportunity to get their music placed on a commercial, and if they start with demanding 100,000 euro, it can be diplomatically difficult as well. You try to level both
So again,
sides.
you're often as a music agent or even in a supervision as a role as a music supervisor, you're really walking this tightrope between translating the realities of both sides, even on the budget level.
Yeah.
And I mean, how frequent is it that you find unreasonable behavior on either side of the fence?
50% of the situations. It depends on who you work with, and even if a producer or an agency knows that what they are asking for budget-wise is totally unreasonable and unfair and cannot be done, they have a client standing behind them saying, well, this kind of music, my 50-year-old son can do that on his computer. It all sounds the same to me. Why do they want 5,000 euro for that, or 10,000 or 20? So what do you say without getting in a controversial situation with your client? You have to try to balance that out in a very diplomatic way. And it's important for the music side, especially for artists, and if you're involved emotionally in music, it's important to understand this tricky situation. Of course, we can say we're not going to work with these arrogant bastards, or let's try to rip them off and get the best out of it. And they're idiots. We're not talking to them. It doesn't help. It doesn't lead anywhere. So we need to have this patience with the other side and educate them. We have something we want to talk about later a little bit, where we want to bring these interests to the same table and find a mutual understanding. But controversy or conflict doesn't help solve these problems, especially if you don't have the time. You have to be very pragmatic in that, and to be pragmatic and to get things done in a field, it needs a certain experience and needs a certain understanding of the complex situation.
Good. So, next slide. Going down the line with the process, with the workflow.
First, we're not talking Chinese here. You would say if you have any questions, I hope. Are there any questions so far? Has anyone made any experience like that, where they thought that they were short-handed musical or budget-wise, or that they had a conflict with an agency?
Wait, maybe we can ask another question. How many people here have ever done a sync deal? Okay. Does what I said kind of reflect your experience as well, or is that... But there's also positive situations, of course, and we could go on for hours and hours telling those stories, but some of them are so placative because they are so strange, of course.
That's a question about having a good publisher, because I'm an artist manager and I get requests for sync deals for companies, and very often they come directly to an artist and say, okay, we have this commercial, it's going to be on TV, but we don't have budget for it. And when I start like including our publisher in a deal, our publisher said, okay, it's impossible to have like the song in a commercial on TV with no budget. And then the artist says like, yeah, but it might give us promotion. No, because the music has to cost money. It's like a lot of work.
And the manager needs to get paid.
And the manager needs to get paid.
Everybody needs to earn their living from the work.
Exactly.
I don't think any production company would expect a director or a director of photography or an editor to work for free. And you know, why is it that with music often we have this line of questioning? Is that an example that you ever put on the table and take it to that sort of, not confrontational, but diplomatic reality?
In personal talks, yes, quite a lot, and you find out that that the freelance producers, the people who are in charge of the actual production, they usually have the best understanding for that situation because they handle budgets and they know how to handle tricky situations like that, and sometimes they're quite happy when you address the subject, because for them it's easier to go back to the client and to the agency when someone from outside has brought the topic up, rather than if they have to go there and say, we can never get music for free, so you're an idiot, it's your job to find something for free, and that's why you're here. But when someone from outside comes and says, with all due respect, we have great music, but you cannot get it for free. Please bring our proposal to your client. We cannot get it for free, but we would be all right with 10,000 euro. You have to be constructive in that field. That happens a lot, actually. Does it change anything? Difficult from one case to the other, really. But it's amazing, like your example here, as an artist manager being approached by a client or by an agency. The efforts they make to find the rights owners is sometimes it's so strange. You don't know. Sometimes they approach artists in a club in the evening rather than finding like the proper rights owner and do like a proper serious business talk. They go to someone, buy them a beer and say, is it okay if I use your song in a commercial? It would be great promo for you. And if you sign on this beer match, we are done. And artists are always afraid to use to lose the deal, to not make the deal and to lose this one great opportunity.
Don't sign beer mats.
Don't sign beer mats. Don't sign anything. Put your hands behind your back. And always, please always refer to your manager and refer to your publishers. They're not the people who want to be in the way of a deal, but they want to bring this deal into the right way, in a proper way.
Okay, so let's get back on the horse. In terms of like, oh, question.
Yeah, I can do it loud without a mic, but okay. Have you heard of a story of an artist who did sign for free, and he gave his music, his or her music, for free, and the commercial actually did some good for the artist, like did the promo that is always promised, that goes.
I heard a lot about artists who gave the music for free and who had to be called back because the artist had already assigned their rights to a publisher and to a label, so they are not even entitled to do that.
Maybe that's a good way to do it. Sure, I give you my music for free, but there's this bad cop publisher who needs the money.
Yeah, but second part of your question, no, I've never seen any artist prove the system wrong in that case.
So it's very similar to the young artists' experience, I think, with the clubs. There's this anecdote of a club asking an artist to play for free because it's going to be a good promo for them, and then the artist answers back with a can you do the catering for free? It will be a good promo for your company. So yeah, I was just curious if it really translates to music on commercial translates to popularity in some way, but you're saying it doesn't.
That leads to another topic, but that's one of the main questions of why sync is so popular, because these days sync is not just considered a source of income in addition to dwindling sales of records, but also as a promo tool. Like when you're on a campaign, you're played a lot, or you play more often. You are played more often than on radio, and hopefully people will pick up on it and want to find out who is behind the music. But coming back to the example of that not every commercial is glamorous or cool. You probably wouldn't Shazam the song under a butter campaign or a car repair store or something like that, because it's just there. And well, maybe you notice the song after you've heard it like the 4th, 5th, 10th time and say, come on, what is this song? It's stuck in my head. I have to find out about it. It can add to the popularity, but please do not expect this to be the key to the start of a career. It's one part of a career, and it has to be, that leads back to the management side and to the label side. It can be a very important factor or contribution to your portfolio as an artist. If you're played on a commercial, even if it's an unsexy commercial, if it's something that is not really that outstanding or something, it sounds good and looks good in your portfolio. And as a manager or as a label, you turn around and go to the promoter and say, look, this band we talked about last month, they're on a commercial now. They have made the next step. So would you like to reconsider having them in your club? Or shouldn't we release a single? Or shouldn't we do another step with someone else? Shouldn't we invest in songwriting? Because obviously their songs are heard by people in a different way. So it's an important argument in an artist's career, but not necessarily in a one-on-one way commercial millionaire gold disc.
But you said that it happens that the agency wants the music for free. And have you ever asked an artist to give his music for free? Or because you thought that the commercial was so good and so could be so good for the artist?
I'm actually doing that at the moment with a campaign for, I can say it here in Poland because, or maybe it will be shown in Poland. It's for Nivea skin products and makeup products, and I did a research job for them, researching a female rapper in South Africa, and she was used as a model in the campaign. She's a rapper. They wanted someone who is in music. He's like a character. They want to like her fans more or less, and they use her as a model in the campaign. And she dances a bit in the background, but mainly it's a short interview. It's a viral film. She gets paid for the model job, period. It's not about the music. It was first being about the model. Then Nivea came and said, wouldn't it be nice if we had the music playing behind her in the interview?
But she'd already been paid for the participation.
For participation in the model job, that's being paid for. Now she is like a 17, 18-year-old female, totally inexperienced rapper in South Africa, having no career outside her neighborhood in Johannesburg. To have her music on a Nivea track, which is used all over the world, potentially all over the world, not necessarily as part of a big campaign, but it will be on the website, it will be a makeup tutorial, and Nivea is obliged to use her name and the title of the song every time this tutorial is used on YouTube or on the Nivea channel. In that case, it's a great opportunity to give them the music. It's not a real commercial. It's not the music that counts, but the music is something extra, and the music in that case is the link between the face you see and the product. In that case, I encourage the artist to do that. I'm doing a proper deal with that, and I'm also putting the obligation in the contract that they have to mention her name every time that this is used. And she and her mother actually agreed to go with that. And Nivea was so impressed that she understands the concept that now they're coming back and say, well, can we get not one, but 3 of your songs? And we want to make a little competition. We want to place these three songs on a website and ask people which of the songs they like most, just to get some client feedback. We would put them on for a very limited time. We could not pay you, but we promise that for the song that wins, you will get a proper budget to do a video. You get some, definitely get your worth of money back for that. So there is some.
So they'll finance the video clip.
They finance the video clip, a proper production video clip. And it's not done the way how Nivea wants a video clip, but how the artist wants the video clip.
I think I'm just looked at the clock. I think we have to move on. So sorry to interrupt on this interesting
it's complex
topic. But should we still address this slide and how to submit music, what some of the elements are of the submission?
We can quickly go through that, because it's when I talk about how I bring music, or how we bring music to the agencies, how you as labels or publishers should bring music to them. It should be a very simple and self-explanatory thing. You wouldn't believe how many mistakes are made in that kind of process. So that's why I think it should at least be addressed once. Don't send them CDs. Don't send them presents going with the CDs. Don't send them long letters and giveaways and goodies. There's a proper briefing, and to the briefing they get very carefully selected MP3s of the song that you want to send. These have to be tagged in a proper way. Tagged means the title and the artist have to be there as soon as it comes up in the client's or agency's iTunes. and also your contact in their field. It doesn't help if they don't know who to contact when they like a song. Don't send them an email and bombard them with follow-up emails. I sent you my email 3 hours ago. What do you think? Great song, eh? It doesn't help. You send them download link, and you definitely send it in time, please, because even when it sounds ridiculous that you get a request on Friday and they want it by Monday, don't send it on Tuesday because you think, come on, it's music business is easy anyway. They must, preferably, they should have it on the desk on Saturday afternoon rather than Monday morning. Basic information is what you put in an accompanying email if there is anything that would help by means of an extra argument, standing of an artist, I don't know, chart situation or something like that. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have the chance, if you have a mood film and you have the equipment, try to edit it to the film. It explains much more than you could do in a mail where you could say, go to 1 minute 27 and from there on the next 30 seconds. No one does that.
Great. And then you double check.
You double check, because we were talking about one-stop clearance, we were talking about the rights ownerships. When we said hip-hop artists, double check if there are samples in your track. Double check if these samples are cleared. Normally, as soon as the word sample turns up, red lights, and people, it's mostly too dangerous to be used, because the right situation is, more often than not, it is not clear, or it's more complex to clear. You're laughing.
I'm laughing because I just,
it's not funny.
Run away from samples like the plague.
Yeah, well, there are cleared sample situations, but especially when it comes, when we're mainly talking to and about independent productions and independent rights owners, it may be okay to use samples within your musical community, and you might even get away with it on a wider spectrum. But as soon as it is up there on the TV screen, it's not a secret anymore. And maybe the rights owners of the sample will be very surprised and will be very interested to contact you as soon as possible after they've seen.
And so will their lawyers.
And so will their lawyers, absolutely, either on the club level or on lawyer level. Make sure that when you offer stuff that it is available for clearance and can be cleared fast, and don't offer stuff where you have to find the drummer which you worked with 5 years ago and who has moved to, I don't know, Mexico, and someone of your friends may have the email address. Don't use that. You cannot get away with that. The right situation should be absolutely clear. As a label or as a publisher, make yourselves familiar with the contracts that you would be signing if everything turns out nicely. You don't invent such a contract, and it's not an invention by a record company or by an agency for that matter. They're all around. You can find them on the internet. They're very easy to understand, but it normally is too late to get acquainted to them when someone asks, can you sign this by tonight? So if you want to work in that field, study contracts. If you offer a song to a briefing and there is a budget of 5,000, 10,000 or 100,000, make sure that the clearance can happen within this budget, and that you're not just doing it for the publishing side with the 10,000 euros, but there's also a master side involved in the same budget. So you have to make your calculations and
you have to divide by 2.
Exactly. It sounds simple enough, but it isn't. And you have to have your instrumental version and a WAV file at hand. Sounds simple enough, but there's a lot of voiceovers and original sounds on commercials, and sometimes they ask for the instrumental version of a song when they like it. So that if you propose songs professionally, you should have these songs at hand. the instrumental versions.
We have 5 minutes left. If there is any questions as we go along, because what happens after this, after you've done all that, you've done your work, you've submitted everything perfectly tagged and identified, and you have 100% of the rights, and you can clear everything, and you're waiting to hear back. And then you're waiting, and you're waiting. And there is a whole process going on behind the scenes, which, even though we have very little time left, I would like Marcus to talk a little bit about. It's this decision-making process. It's the 74 bits of opinion. Or what can you tell us about that when you're waiting and waiting and waiting?
It's different every time. It's not, you hardly ever find the point where you can interfere and say, if I have this person behind me, then the deal will be done. It depends on so many factors, and mainly on the ones at the bottom, friends and family, whether ego, vanity, whatever. Your secretary might have or the CEO of the client's secretary might have an opinion on that. And since the CEO wants to look cool in front of his secretary, he rather goes for that one song rather than for the other one.
Could be the secretary's niece or nephew who has an opinion.
Whoever came across his path that very morning might have an influence there. There's so many factors involved that you can do your job only as good as you've learned, as you follow the rules and as your experience goes. But then there's so many things who come into play. I've had
that. It's so encouraging, isn't it? Is everyone encouraged by this slide?
Yeah, it's part of the game. I'm used to it. I've been very frustrated sometimes. I've not received a lot of money sometimes for music that I broke to agencies and to clients where you were absolutely sure that you had the deal. You were absolutely sure. I already signed contracts to spend the money, and then someone came back and said, "Well, look, the managing director got back from vacation this Saturday, and he just looked over the campaign. He says, 'No, we do this without music. We don't need music anymore.' Or he has spoken without us knowing with a befriended publisher and they found something else. Or his son has composed something for 5,000 euro. So it's a lot of things that come into the equation. It's a long way to get a placement. We, as on the music side and on the agency side, we have to have certain professional standards to get into the process. Within the process, there's not a lot that we can do. We can try to be present, but that's about it.
Now here we've already kind of covered this, because through Ekaterina's comments earlier, we also talked about the job of a good publisher, and that we should probably include managers in there as well, labels, and a music supervisor. Do you want to sort of describe very quickly what a music supervisor is and does?
Well, music supervisor, music agent would be a better description, because what we do is we provide the service of doing all this that we talked about for the last hour. Because as an independent artist, or as an artist in general, but as an independent label, as an independent publisher, of course everyone would love to have a sync or several syncs, or would like to have their catalogs recognized for sync. But you're in the business of selling music, distributing music, promoting music, and promoting an artist's career. Sync is a totally different ballgame, totally different aspect of the business. So it would help if you either had someone on your staff who is a specialist in that, or if you worked with a music agent to help you with all this and provide this service. And this is not to promote my services personally, but in order to avoid mistakes, because every mistake that is made in a process in this part of the industry reflects badly on our side, on the music side. It turns off potential clients for the future and say, look, I tried to do this, but everything went wrong with the licensing. I'm never going to work with labels again. I'm not going to use a song, I'm always going to use a composer or library music or whatever. And we don't want to turn people off. We want to encourage people to use our music.
Very well. I'm speeding through this now. Of course, we've had some questions before, but I don't know whether we have any last questions before we tell you a little bit of... oh yeah, there we go.
Would you encourage the artists to think about making like sync-friendly songs when they do the songwriting? Because it's like I've experienced like from 2 songs which I have, like the one with the hook line is "sounds good to me" is more often used than where the hook line is "keep it irresponsible," for example. And also I needed like a Polish hip-hop song, and I don't speak Polish, and then I had someone I knew to translate the lyrics, and then it happened to be something like, I'd like to sign my autograph, but my cum on your tits would wipe it off. And then I was like, okay, that song cannot be used. So would you encourage the artists to think about what the lyrics are when they write?
Well, if you want to work in the sync field, in producing and composing music for commercials specifically, then of course, yes, then it's your job to make your music as attractive as possible to the client. You're providing this, let's say, creative service as a composer. As an artist as such, who thinks of their individual career in the first place, I would not advise to bow to any rules put on by someone else who hasn't got a clue about music, but to follow your own idea and to be as original and as individual and as strong as possible. And if someone wants your music, they will find your music, or an agent will find your music. But I would never go to, would I go to Prodigy and say, could you make Firestarter a little bit more fireworks and Christmas friendly? A little bit more. Put some Christmas in it, and you get a great song. You wouldn't do that, and I would advise an artist to stay as original and as artistic as possible. And the second part of your question leads to the point, like, I have so many, especially artists and composers coming to me, you have to take on my music in your portfolio because it's absolutely syncable. That's we've talked about it several times. Syncable is the key word. You or me, we don't decide if music is syncable or not. Syncable music is music that is used for sync. But of course, a song about depression and suicide is not...
I would just say, whenever I hear the word syncable, it's almost as bad to me as the running away from the samples like the plague. Whenever someone says, oh, I have something that's really syncable,
I don't want to listen to that, right? Because all my friends say it's syncable. All my friends say it would fit perfectly to a commercial. And then you say, well, but they sing about suicide and depression. Yeah, but the sound is great. The sound's great. You have to listen to the sound. No, sorry, it's not us who decide about these factors. As an artist, be true to your music, and as a composer who is in the field of composing music for commercials, be as professional as possible. That's the artistic advice I would give in that field.
So now we've been through the whole ecosystem. We've got to the end of it, and we've also run out of time. We're almost over 5 minutes. But just before we finish, if we may, if you are interested in sync, for future reference, there is a new European project that is part of the Music Moves Europe. The website is still a work in progress, so don't judge it too harshly. I was up late last night. And it's europeansync.eu, and we count on the expertise of Marcus Linde and also Nies Bogvad from Copenhagen Film Music. And so there's a lot more information coming. The project will be running over the next 12 months, and we would invite everyone to participate. And finally, I have new socks. I want to thank Don't Panic, we're from Poland. They match my shirt, and I'm a happy guy. So thank you, Marcus. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Don't Panic. Thank you, Spring Break, and enjoy.